banter for a few, then we'll kind of have a hard stop, and I'll start it.
What's up,
Cool.
YouTube?
Excelente. What's up, y'all? As you guys are coming into this week's live stream, and one thing really quick, it is feeding back all of my voice to me, which is tricky. I can deal with it, but I hear myself talking back every time. We're going to nail it, y'all. Welcome to this week's Evergreen Marketing Show, guys and gals. This week's topic is going to be a follow-up, basically, on some content we put out a couple months ago on the Google leak. And I've got Mallory, who I will introduce you guys to, reintroduce you guys to officially. And we're going to dive deep on what has happened the past couple months since the Google leak came out. But before we dig in there, Mallory, I'm pumped to have you on the Evergreen Marketing Show. And for people who don't know you, do a quick little brief intro. And what do you do here at Carrot? And then we'll officially launch into the podcast.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here, Trevor. I am Carrot's Customer Education Manager. I've been here since the end of last year, and I've been working full-time in digital marketing for about a decade. I've been working on my own websites for about a decade before that. So I love, eat, breathe, talk about all things SEO, websites, digital marketing.
Heck yeah. And guys, Mallory's in New Orleans, which is one of my favorite cities I've been to. Been there a couple times. Love the energy there. Love the food there. Just so many amazing things about the culture in New Orleans. So I need to make it back, but pumped to have you representing New Orleans on the Carrot team.
Yeah, it's a good town.
Fun. Heck yeah. So, Braden, I'll make the hard chop here. Everyone watching this on YouTube, we're going to go into podcast version. And then at the end, we'll open up for some Q&A specifically in the Facebook group for anyone watching this live. But here we go. Let's get ready for the show. What are the real ramifications of the Google leak? The big Google leak in May 2024 that came out and kind of hit the SEO world by storm. A lot of people were wondering, number one, at first, was it real? And then they were wondering, what are the things, what does this mean to SEO? And I think now that we're a couple months in, there's a lot of indicators of, well, these are some things that we thought were true for a while, and this confirmed it, and there's some new things in there. And so I'm bringing on Mallory, our SEO and content strategy specialist here at Carrot, and we're going to dive in. 2 months in, what has kind of transpired, and what should people pay attention to related to the Google leak to get your website ranked higher? So, Mallory, welcome back on the Evergreen Marketing Show. Pumped to have you. And we did it a little bit before we hit record here, but Give a brief intro. Like, what does your day-to-day kind of look like at Carrot related to wrapping your head around what's going on with SEO for the market?
Yeah, well, so I'm Carrot's Customer Education Manager, so I'm trying to help make it easier for our members to use our tools to succeed with SEO and getting found in search engines like Google. And one of the things that I've always done throughout the course of my digital marketing career is try to stay up to date on news and changes, because these things change a lot. Algorithms change, whether it's Google or Facebook or whatever platform. And so I saw pretty quickly when this news first broke at the end of May. May 28th, Search Engine Land, which is one of the big publications that serves the SEO industry, they broke this news that there was this huge piece of documentation that was shared with Rand Fishkin. So Rand Fishkin, former founder of Moz, a huge SEO company. He sold it a number of years ago. Now he's the founder of SparkToro, but sort of a whistleblower insider, somebody with access to, it was like 2,800 pieces of documentation from the way that the search algorithm works, shared it with Rand Fishkin. Now, Rand, because he's been out of the day-to-day of the SEO world for a number of years, he decided to loop in Michael King, who is the CEO of iPullRank. So Michael King, really knowledgeable about technical SEO, and Michael King reviewed these hundreds and thousands of pieces of documentation to kind of understand and interpret what to do with this information, what it all means. And so a lot of our understanding of what's in these leaked documents, that comes from Michael King's interpretation. And then since then, lots of other technical SEO specialists across the world have been interpreting and kind of figuring out what to do with this information.
And the wild thing, Mallory, where I've talked with some people and they thought, well, this is literally a document that explains Google's algorithms. It's really not that, right? It's a bunch of data points and a bunch of kind of things that, like you said, it takes someone to dive in and piece them together to kind of figure out what we need to do.
Yeah. So a quote from Michael King about a month ago, Rand Fishkin and Michael King about a month ago at the end of June, they hosted a Spark Tour office hours that I attended where they dove even deeper into all of this stuff after having about a month to more thoroughly go through all the documents.
Yep.
Michael King directly said that this is the ingredients, not the recipe, right? So basically what SEO specialists have been doing as they're looking at and trying to interpret all these documents, they're trying to pull together the understanding of like what all these ingredients are and then interpret and guess what Google's recipe is, what their algorithm is based on that, if that makes sense.
Yep. And before, we've got 5 key things we're going to walk through, guys, you should really pay attention to that can either help you, do SEO better and rank better, and or there's some things you should just be aware of to make sure that you're doing the right things to do what Google wants. The one question that popped up for me, Mallory, that someone asked me right after the Google leak came out, is they said, so now that this leak is out, is Google going to change the rules on us? And I've got my thought on it, but I want to toss that question your way. If someone were to come to you and say, hey, now that some of these things are public, is Google going to go, well, now that they know that, we're going to change how we do that? Kind of what's your take?
Yeah. So to me, a lot of what was in the documentation either confirms things that a lot of folks in SEO either already knew or maybe guessed at. And there are some things that came out of this documentation that I think has the potential for bad actors to try to game the system. And if they do so, which they probably will, because that's what just tends to happen in SEO over the years. If people take this information and game the system, then my guess is that Google is going to then have to continue to evolve and change the rules because ultimately Google wants best for real human beings. And they don't want people to just be using those black hat SEO techniques where we sort of try to manipulate the system.
Exactly. So guys, that's the part that I want you to really, really key in on. What Mallory just said is you might look at some of these things and go, well, cool, it says this about this, I'm going to go game the system there. It'll work for a period of time, just like back in the day when I first started doing SEO. It was the meta descriptions or the keyword, the meta keyword data, or you could cram a bunch of keywords with white text over a white background, and it would work. But once again, people gamed it, and it isn't really. Those aren't things that are actually good for the user. So as we dive into these 5 things, I want you taking it from that perspective of what are the things I can do that Google is always going to like, that lead to the user getting more of what they want, and aren't me trying to game the system for short-term gain. Because if we try to game it for short-term gain, we've had so many customers who have done things that game it. You get a big uplift. Everyone's looking at that person going, oh my gosh, they ranked so fast, so quick. Let me do what they're doing. But then 14 months later, the ranking goes back down to where they were before. We don't want that. We want long-term, sustainable, evergreen leads and traffic coming your way. So let's kick off the 5 items. So I'm just going to toss over to you, Mallory, and you can dig into these 5 if I have any questions that pop up for me, or if anyone asks questions, I'm gonna dive in and ask them because there's probably questions people will have. But let's walk through the 5 biggest takeaways that we want to pass along to our Carrot ecosystem from this Google document leak.
Okay, so the first one is about brand. And it's really creating a very strong brand for your company or your business, both through Google and off. This was one of the things that I'm pulling up exactly what Rand said in some of the original stuff when this was first being leaked. Rand Fishkin literally said, brand matters more than anything else. If there was one universal piece of advice I had for marketers seeking to broadly improve their organic search rankings and traffic, it would be build a notable, popular, well-recognized brand in your space outside of Google search. And this is marketing 101,
Yep.
right? It's just creating a really strong, trustworthy, credible brand. I know y'all have talked here on the Evergreen Marketing Live show about, creating that credibility,
Yep.
building that strong differentiation, right? But this is the key, because ultimately, if you have people going to Google and searching for your brand name versus just searching for a generic term, that's going to help you in so many ways. Having that brand awareness of your company versus just generic solution is always going to be more beneficial in the long run for your business.
It's huge. And guys, inside the Carrot tool, you can actually go to the Keyword Explorer if you have the SEO add-on, put in your URL into that Keyword Explorer, and it'll tell you what keywords you're ranking for and what percentage approximately of your organic traffic is coming from it. And that's one way you can tell if you're getting any real measurable brand search. When I go to some of our clients who are doing a lot of radio advertising or TV or offline marketing, you're going to see pretty immediately, I can go, yep, they're doing offline marketing. People are searching for their brand name and they're landing on Google. Mallory, so with that, just so we can kind of teach people how to think as well, and go beyond the tactic here. What is it about that action? The action of someone recognizing some sort of marketing that you did and then going to the internet. What is it about that action that Google likes? Like, why do they feel that that's a good thing?
Yeah, so let me go through an example that Michael King and Rand Fishkin gave in this webinar that I attended about a month ago. So many years ago, there was an example. They showed a picture of a restaurant, a Thai food restaurant, that literally changed their company name, their restaurant name, to Thai Food Near Me. Basically trying to game the search results, right? They saw that at the time there's a lot of people searching for, Thai food restaurants near me. And so they're like, oh, brilliant. I'll just name my business this kind of generic name, but that they thought would help them get more traffic from search, right? So you can just imagine a storefront of a restaurant with that Thai food near me as the name.
Oh, yeah.
It's a terrible idea. Do not do that, right? And so one of the other examples they gave was Michael King, who is presenting this information. He's the CEO and founder of iPullRank. He gave the example of his own personal brand. So Michael King, very common name. And so if you went to Google right now and searched that name alone without any other additional, information qualifiers, it's going to be really hard to just find him because there's going to be a ton of people with that name, right? Yeah. Which is why he came up with a very specific, recognizable, unique brand name, iPullRank, for his company, right? He's into rapping and all these things where it kind of like is a combination of all of the things that made him different as a marketer, as a person, kind of got inspired for his brand name for that. So if somebody goes to search iPullRank, they're going to find his website.
Yep. So that right there, when I first read that, like Carrot, our company name, it's tricky, right? So hindsight 2020, we're named after a vegetable, and probably most of the people who go to Google to search Carrot are probably not searching for us specifically. And so in that way, our domain name isn't really quote unquote optimized or the ideal to really drive that brand search. But when we do YouTube videos, when we're doing other content, speaking at events, doing ads, it does drive brand search. The tricky thing is, guys, when you're looking at your company name, like we'll use Bo Hollis a good bit as an example on here. He has a company called Simply Sold. And Simply Sold is a brand name, but when you look at other companies where it might be like Sell My House Fast in Idaho, as an example, and that is their brand name, most of the people who are searching Sell My House Fast in Idaho probably are not looking for that company. And years ago, you could do that and kind of game the Google My Business listing on that. But do you see, just your kind of gut reaction, do you see Google leading away from that, where it's the exact match keyword domain being something that that is going to be rewarded, or should people really go towards a more recognizable brand that when people search it, will actually find them?
I think looking at it from a holistic marketing perspective, and that's the way I would always try to look at something, is not just through a pure SEO lens.
Mm.
I try to take a step back and
Yeah.
think about a kind of overall, what are you doing for all of your marketing and how does it all tie together and how is it strategic? I think from that perspective, if somebody was starting fresh, I would try to come up with a unique, recognizable brand name and a domain name that tied into that. So another example of a company that started many, many years ago, I used to do a lot of art and craft shows. That was a big part of how I started some of my early businesses, how I was learning how to do SEO and digital marketing way back in the day.
Mm.
And I was around when Etsy first started. So Etsy, ETSY, completely made up name, very short domain name they were able to
Yeah.
get, right? A
Yeah.
4-letter domain name, basically. And if anybody searches Etsy, they own all of the search results for that because there's nobody else having that name.
Mm.
And so, again, this is, it's easier to kind of think that way if you're starting a business from scratch, because to rebrand and to do all of that stuff is a whole other ball game, right? And you have to
Yep.
weigh the pros and cons of whether that is worth it for your business overall.
Yep.
But if somebody was starting completely from scratch and listening to this, I
Yeah.
would say, yeah, think about how you can create a really strong, unique brand overall.
I love it. So guys, big lesson here. Do other marketing, not just online marketing. Offline marketing will actually help your online marketing and grow your business. So moving to the second one, this one here, when I first heard you say it, I'm like, that's a concept that people should remember. So let's go into the second item from the Google leak that people should take and remember.
So are we talking about the traffic first, rankings
Yes.
later?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. So this one, and that quote, traffic first, rankings later, again, comes from Michael King during this office hours that they hosted about a month ago. And yeah, this one is sort of mind-blowing and yet sort of affirming. This is something that I think I and a lot of people in the SEO industry probably had guessed at for a very long time. But it was one of those questions that I think a lot of people in the marketing industry would try to ask Google and Google would sort of deny. But basically, they built a whole browser, Chrome, Google Chrome, which many of us use, right? They added that to the whole internet ecosystem many, many years ago as another way that they're able to gather data about how people use and browse the web and how they interact with websites and web pages. And they also have Android as well. Lots of people use Android devices, and so they can gather all sorts of information about how people are using and interacting with websites that way. And so what was seen in these documents is that Google's actually looking at this stuff, right? And this is where engagement signals are really important. And this is something I've looked at for a really long time. If you're looking in whether Google Analytics or in your analytics dashboard within your Carrot site, right? I think it's really important to look not only at pure traffic, like how many views a page is getting, but look at some of the engagement signals. So for example, if you're in like your Carrot dashboard, this would also be similar if you're just using any sort of other analytics tool, but you're often going to have on a landing page report, for example, where you could see what are the top pages that people are seeing first when they view your website. You'll have access to be able to see the average engagement time per session. So basically a rough estimate of how long on average are people spending on any given page. And you don't necessarily need people spending 10 minutes on a page, right? There's a level to which somebody's going to naturally spend an amount of time on a page. But if somebody's on average is only spending a couple of seconds and you have a lot of traffic to that page, just 1 or 2 or 3 seconds is not going to be usually enough time to even read what's on the page, let alone interact with or fill out a form, become a lead, become a customer, right? And so those engagement metrics are really important because Google looks at all of that stuff.
And over the years, people have called them user signals and probably many other words. And the big thing here, y'all, is, and this isn't new. Like Mallory said, this isn't something where, oh my gosh, this was published and now people are paying attention to it. For years and years and years, Carrot and the SEO ecosystem in general has looked at those user signals. What is it that we can put on a page to engage someone, truly get them to want to absorb or use that website? And like Mallory said, if it shows someone visiting multiple pages and opting into a form, taking an action, there's a high likelihood that Google's looking at it and saying, oh, that website kind of helped them solve their problem because it looks like they took an action on it. But like Mallory said, if the person goes there and then bounces right back out, Google's going, it doesn't look like they actually solved that problem. That wasn't a very useful website to them. And so that's where on our websites, we make little mini sites, right? Where there's always clicks and there should always be spots where you can engage someone to move them to that next path. And that's where there is the question all the time of, do you put robust content on pages or do you not? And I don't think anybody should put long content for the sake of putting 3,000 words in because the top competitor over here has it. You should put as much content as needed to engage them, answer the questions, add value in that area. Are there any things, Mallory, that pop up for you that are just kind of like quick off the top of your mind, things that people either do wrong oftentimes for driving engagement on a website, or that they could look at to really go, yeah, these types of things can oftentimes help with engagement?
Well, a couple of things that people can look at and that can potentially help. Video can be a great way to boost the overall average time on a page if done well, right? Again, don't just add video that is not relevant, that isn't actually helpful, and think that it's going to help you. It needs to actually be useful to the people who you're trying to attract to that specific page and that are looking to solve a specific problem. But if people are watching a YouTube video that's embedded on a page, for example, that's going to have them spending more time and actually engaging with that page. And also, YouTube specifically is owned by Google. That's a whole other thing, but that's some of the other stuff that we saw in some of this Google leak documentation, is that YouTube is yet another platform owned by Google, and that's another way that they can see people interacting with things across the web. Another thing that I would say, back to the looking at your analytics. So within Carrot's dashboard, we have analytics, but whatever platform you use, even if you're looking at your social media analytics, right? And you're looking at the back end of your Instagram analytics. Analytics are really helpful because they can inform you not only about sort of vanity metrics like traffic, number of views of a page, or number of likes of a post, if we're talking social media, but those engagement signals are so important to help you sort of get insights about how you can continue to improve, what you can double down on. I always love to look and see what is working, what is starting to get some traction. And especially if you see that average engagement time on one or two pages, you've got more pages that are engaged and you have a few that maybe aren't getting that engagement, there's going to be opportunity to improve there. And I love to take what is already getting a little bit of traction and working, especially if you've got a newer site, a smaller site, you don't have a ton of traffic. Try to find what seems to be working and look at maybe your competitors and a similar page and like, what are they doing that's different? And how could you make your information better, more useful for those right people that you're trying to attract and you're trying to work with?
Yep, I love it. And one thing that I'll look at too, we have some of the older Carrot sites where there's a lot more words without kind of structure and pictures and things like that. And when a prospect does come in and they see a wall of text that's 500 words with no images, and it's like, 2 or 3 big paragraphs, oftentimes that reader kind of freezes a little bit, right? Because they now look at this giant wall of text and they wonder, well, am I ready to commit to reading that? And so when you guys are going through and launching a Carrot site, you'll see how we have separators and blocks that you can use to break up that text. And there's a lot of examples we can share in our Facebook group where we show you, hey, here's how to still have robust content that's going to be enough content to answer the questions and provide usefulness and get it ranked high. But here's how to break up that text. So avoid the giant walls of text. Like Mallory said, video is amazing, and there's so many other things that you can do to really drive that. So you had brought up, so we'll kind of dive into video. Is there anything else on the video side that you wanted to touch on, or are we good there and go to backlinks?
Well, actually, if you want to kind of skip ahead, because I feel like the video thing ties into one of the really interesting aspects, which was about mentions. So one of the things that some of this documentation shows, again, this is speculation by the people who read. I have not read the 2,800 pages of documentation myself, by the way. I'm interpreting other people's interpretations and trusting that folks like Michael King really know what they're talking about. But one of the things that they noticed was that there seems to be evidence that brand mentions, including within YouTube video transcripts, can actually possibly have sort of the same impact as getting backlinks to your website, right? So this again ties back to the importance of brand. It kind of builds on backlinks, which we can talk a little bit more about links and things in a moment. But getting mentions of your brand specifically in YouTube videos, because again, Google owns YouTube, and there was evidence that they're looking at the automatic transcripts that YouTube creates. And so, if somebody says my Carrot website, or if somebody says Bo Hollis, for example, right, they're seeing those things, and that's creating sort of brand awareness within Google's eyes for your company.
So with that, kind of turning into an action item, was there any indication, Mallory, of does it have to be on someone else's channel, or can it be on my own channel where there's mentions?
That I'm not sure about. I haven't read all of the 2,800 pages of documentation specifically. But also thinking through a holistic marketing lens, once again, right? Whether you are producing your own YouTube channel content, because that you can control more of. And if you're producing your own YouTube content, like I actually do this for my own projects outside of Carrot, right? I have a YouTube channel. And within that, you can add within your descriptions, within your pinned comments, you can add links back to your website there, right? So you have that opportunity no matter what to kind of create those citations within your own YouTube channel. But the more you can create press and publicity and brand awareness for your business, whether it is getting featured on other people's podcasts, whether it's getting featured on other people's YouTube channels, whether it is getting press and publicity through sources like Haro, Help a Reporter Out, or Source of Sources, which is a newer one I love, created by the original Haro founder, Peter Shankman, right? Whatever tools that you're using to get press and publicity, those things can also help you build backlinks, but any of those mentions of your business just help overall with your comprehensive, holistic marketing strategy.
So Source of Sources, I haven't had my ear to the ground on that yet. So is that kind of taken back to the good old days of Haro?
Yes.
Really?
So
cool.
So I actually, I recently, in the last couple of weeks, updated one of our blog posts. So we have a great blog post about how to use Haro. So you could check that out for more in-depth information. But so Haro, Help a Reporter Out, is a tool. You basically sign up for free to be a source, an expert, and you get all of these emails. It's like 2 or 3 emails a day. So it can kind of get overwhelming if you're not careful. But it was originally founded many years ago by Peter Shankman, who had a background as a journalist. The original Haro got bought out and kind of bought out again and bought out. And it's still part of something called Connectively. So you can still use that. But earlier this year, Peter Shankman kind of just got fed up with the whole situation. And he originally called it Help Every Reporter Out. It was sort of cheeky. It was almost Haro all over again. But he changed it so it's Source of Sources. I actually get those. I will say I've been following it for a number of months now. I haven't seen a ton of requests that would be super relevant to a lot of our real estate investor members. However, sometimes broader real estate topics come through. I do see some heating and air conditioning topics, some home services topics, some travel topics. So, keep an eye out on it. But ultimately, you want to make sure anytime you're submitting to journalists, you want to make sure that you're pitching something relevant and helpful to them to be able to get that publicity.
I love it. I just joined it, so I'm pumped because I was early with Haro and saw all of the changes. I'm pumped to see it come back. I love it. Cool. Where do you want to take it next? We've got a bunch of good items on here. There's backlinks, other areas. Where do you want to take it next? What should people take away from the
backlinks? One of the things that they talked about was the importance of backlinks that actually generate traffic. So again, Michael King said something about traffic first, rankings later. And part of that is all that Chrome data. But really, if you can get a relevant backlink where people from that piece of press and publicity are actually coming through that link, clicking that link and finding their way to your website and then engaging, that's going to be very, very valuable. Another thing kind of related to links that they talked about was Google may be looking at the words around anchor text, so anchor text is the words that are actually hyperlinked, right? So click this link here is a really bad example, but a lot of times you're going to have something much more descriptive. But basically, they seem to be looking at the words around the actual link text as well to kind of determine the context and meaning of what is being linked to. Now, caveat, I want to make sure that people don't take this and again try to game the system. This is one of the things that I have concerns about, people hearing this within SEO circles and suddenly keyword stuffing all of the information that's around linked text, because I think that's one of those things that potentially could happen. It could maybe work briefly for a while and then backfire big time.
Yeah, and the biggest thing, guys, is once again go back to what would a user want to read? What gives a user clarity? What adds value? And even with a good number of our client sites, even ones that are ranking really well, you'll still read some of those the H2s, the heading twos, that just don't really make sense when they're read, or some of the other content. So I would just really ask that question once again. Write it for humans, for the usability of the human, because Google's smart enough. They'll pick up what everything else is saying, just like this is showing. They're smart enough, right? They're not just looking at the anchor text, they're looking around it. So write it for the human, and I think we're good to go. You talked a little bit about expand content with clusters and expert authors. Any other things that you want to dive in on that side?
Yeah, well, with the clustering, so we have our niche authority builder, which makes it really simple to kind of create these pillar pages that go deep onto a topic, and then to create supporting posts that kind of go into one aspect of that topic, maybe not quite as deeply, and have all those linked together. One of the things that we were seeing with some of this documentation is that just creating clarity and not having a lot of different topics on the same website. Basically, you want to make sure that your whole website is kind of broadly focused on one topic, whether that's, you're a real estate investor. So all of the content is kind of broadly focused around information about that, or you're a heating and air conditioning company, and so you don't have topics around gardening, for example, right, that have nothing to do with what your main topic, because that creates confusion for Google and for users.
One question that pops up, Mallory, and feel free to give your answer, or if you don't have one on it. So let's say we're talking about the real estate agent, or who's also an investor, or we're talking about the HVAC person who's also a plumber and an electrician. Are those topics, do you feel, close enough to where Google still feels that they're a cluster, or should people start to separate some of that content out?
I think it could be something worth testing. So again, this information is all through purely the lens of SEO and Google search, right? Some of those questions start getting into bigger business decision questions and weighing those pros and cons. I will say one example that they shared during this SparkToro office hours last month with Rand Fishkin and Michael King. They shared an example. So SparkToro is basically an audience research software platform. So you can do research in different ways, slightly different ways than you would do keyword research, for example, to kind of see where your customers are online. And they shared an example of, they had created this really great gift guide for foodies last year. Right. And then they had people searching literally for this SparkToro gift guide. It was really hard to find. It's probably actually easier to find now, because there was hundreds of people watching this webinar and all searching for this gift guide at the same time and sending that traffic to this post. But basically, the content on this post, Rand Fishkin is a huge foodie. It had a lot of really great kind of handpicked, curated gifts, but nothing on the rest of their website has anything to do with food or gift guides, right? So it's like this weird piece of content that's out by itself, and that sort of thing can confuse Google. It's not going to rank or get found very well compared to that piece of content on a website that's all about food.
Yep, gotcha. It's a completely different search, or different intent with that. I like it. So we're coming down to the last piece or two. What are some of the other things, the final thing or two, that people should take away from the Google leak? Because like I said, there's 2,500 pages. So we're trying to distill down, what are the handful of things to pay attention to for our audience?
Yeah, I would say the kind of big final one, which ties in with a lot of stuff we've already talked about, is really driving people to your website from other marketing methods as well, and thinking about your marketing as a holistic marketing strategy. Because again, Google is looking at Chrome data. They're looking at all of the different ways that people interact with your brand. They're looking at things like brand mentions, right? And so the more you can see your website and SEO and getting your brand found in search when people are already looking for your brand, that is going to be a big piece of your whole marketing strategy. So some examples for a lot of our members might be things like when you send out direct mail, using QR codes that point directly back to your, your website to make it really easy for them to get to your website. So they're coming straight to your website, right? From those
Yep.
pieces of postcard direct mail. If you're doing TV ads, right? Making sure that you have a strong brand name, you're telling people to go to your website. So they're going to Google potentially and searching for your website, not searching for a generic term. They're looking for you, right? That's going to help you overall with your marketing. Even things like if you're doing social media, they talked about zero-click content. So this is a term that Spark Toro and their team, Amanda, who's their amazing marketing head of marketing over there, she kind of came up with this term a couple of years ago. But you might have seen this; it sort of gained fire. But if you imagine a piece of content on Instagram or LinkedIn, where basically the piece of information is kind of self-contained on that platform, you're not asking somebody to like click a link in bio or whatever. You're just kind of giving them all the information right there in whatever platform, because a lot of these social media platforms, they don't want you to link out to your website.
Yeah.
They want to keep you on their platform. But by adding value on whatever, social media platform or other, other places that you can, you're creating that demand for people to go search for you, right? You're building trust with them. You're sharing useful information that they can just get and take, and they build that trust and awareness. And then they're going to search later on to go find the blog post that tells them more on your website, or to go to learn how to work with you.
So one thing that I absolutely love about this is we'll get the question quite a bit from people that are doing direct mail or doing TV commercials of, do I include the URL? We had Ryan Dossie, who's a big member of ours, soldfast.com, big direct mail guy, and he's a big believer in putting his website address on the direct mail. And then you'll talk to this other person over here who they're a big direct mail person as well, and they don't do it. And so one of the benefits that I want you guys to get across here that Mallory had laid out there is that by driving people online from all of your offline marketing through QR codes like Mallory mentioned, or direct mail, or your website, on your TV commercials or social media, by doing that, it actually aids and helps with your website ranking in Google. It helps Google to recognize, hey, people are actively looking for this company. They're actively coming to this company from other sources, not just from a gamed backlink scheme or something like that, through Google search. So those are all things. When you guys ask the question, should you include your website on things? I'm going to categorically say, in almost every case I can think of, probably, because it's going to help to drive that search. So there's so many things in here, Mallory. We could probably be unpacking this for 5 hours and not scratch it. But any other kind of final parting piece of advice in this world where there's a little bit more clarity now, or at least confirmation on what it takes to rank well in Google? Anything in this environment that people should really take away from this call to march towards better rankings in Google?
I mean, I feel like I've said it already, but I'll say it again. It's about getting back to holistic marketing strategy and marketing basics, and thinking big picture about your marketing. And that's one of the things I keep hearing in SEO circles, in digital marketing circles. It's, we're not marketing like it was 2010 where we could game the system. We're almost marketing like it's 1960, where it's really about creating relationships, creating brand awareness, working with human beings and creating that demand for people from the offline space into the online space.
Yeah. And people might be thinking, oh my gosh, Trevor, oh my gosh, Mallory, that sounds harder. That sounds like it's harder. I'm going to challenge everyone here. I'm going to challenge everyone that actually, if you are able to invest into brand, a brand doesn't have to be Coca-Cola brand. It could be your micro brand locally, right? It's your name or your company name. When you're able to invest in that, that actually creates more of a moat for your business in your marketing, in your SEO, and it actually protects your business and those results for the longer term. When it is about gaming the system through Google search or any marketing method, then it's easier for other people to just just game better than you and remove you from that position. So if you want to build a business that is lasting, a business that truly brings in evergreen traffic and leads over a longer period of time, because you want to build your empire, you want to build that business that gives you freedom and impact, this is actually great news for you. Because for those of us who want to work on building a real business that solves real problems for real people, I think the news couldn't be better. Like, go add value, build a brand people recognize, get your word out there, get the name out there, have your online be the hub of that credibility and content, and you're going to be rewarded as you do this more and more consistently. So, Mallory, thank you for coming on and sharing your knowledge and expertise. And there's so many other things that we're probably going to be coming to our audience with over time, whether it's in the Facebook group or other things that's going to help people dive deeper on SEO. So thank you for sharing your expertise and just being who you are. I absolutely love your energy and getting you in front of our audience every opportunity we get. It's something that gives me joy. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Trevor.
For sure. Guys, what we're going to do is we're going to wrap this session. But before we do, I have a couple kind of announcements or calls to action for you. The first one is, if you're listening to this right now on the podcast side of things, so Apple Podcasts or Spotify, hit subscribe. Hit subscribe right there in the app, because we're going to be delivering on every single week a couple pieces of content for you here in the Evergreen Marketing Show. You're going to be getting this weekly kind of a deep dive on a marketing topic, where we bring in the experts, we bring in the data, we're going to deep dive on a topic, and then right after that broadcast, which we do live in our Facebook group as well, the Evergreen Marketing Facebook group, then we're going to do Q&A. So anyone hopping on live, you get a treat of kind of the after hours session. So subscribe on the podcast and head straight over to Facebook and look up the Evergreen Marketing for Real Estate group. Okay, so join both of those. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to have a call to action for you too. Right here where you're watching this, hit subscribe, so you can access not just these types of content, but other videos that Mallory creates that dive into specifics on how to use a feature, or specifics on how to tackle a marketing challenge, or we have case studies and all kinds of other content on there to help you drive the business you want to drive. So hit subscribe. And then one last call to action, y'all. I want you to share this piece of content, whether it's on your social media or on your podcast or on YouTube. Share this piece of content with either a team member of yours who's going to help execute it, or a person that you know that could get benefit from this piece of content. Just hit them with a text message. Hey, Mark, I thought you could get some value from this. Or hit them with an Instagram DM. Just share this with one person so they can get value and grow their business as well. All right, guys, see you on the next episode. And for everyone in the after hours, we'll hang on here and answer some questions. We'll see you guys next time. Are we live in the after hours? All right. Sweet. Awesome, y'all. So one thing I want to toss over to people and challenge y'all is, we do these every Thursday at 11 o'clock Pacific time. So lock that on the calendar, because we're going to be coming at you as that consistent resource to unlock your marketing. And I just encourage y'all to come here with questions, block it on the calendar ahead of time, and use this as a resource for you. So I know there's one question that came in for sure, and we can address this one. And if there's any other things, Mallory, that pop up for you that you're like, oh my gosh, people might have questions on these, we can dig into those. But Braden, hit us with the question, buddy.
All right, man. Yeah, Tony Stewart's been here. He's got a couple things for you. So his first question, is there anything that you used to have people do that because of the Google leak, you have encouraged them to discontinue?
Okay, there we go. So repeating that question, is there anything that we used to guide people to do within Carrot that since the Google leak, we've actually asked people to stop doing or to change? I'm going to think about that for a second. Is there anything top of mind for you, Mallory, that this changed what we guide people on?
So I will say there are a couple of things that have been suggested that could be worth testing. And these are some things that we have started looking at internally within our product team here at Carrot to figure out, because they could potentially be
Well, it looks like, Trevor, you might get your chance to take this one, because I think we lost Mallory for a second here.
Okay, I thought it was on our end. So we're still going, guys. The beauty of live technology. So when as Mallory comes back in, just thinking out loud, Tony, at a high level. So I'm gonna run through the items, right? So there's the actual page structure. There's the tech and code base. Nothing is changing there. I think that the main thing that we're always guiding people on is streamline those pages, make them a better user experience, and compress your images. Our system already compresses the images that you upload, but there's some things when I dive into some websites that you can do to make those load even quicker. So nothing has changed there. We're just doubling down on good user experience. Mallory, she's back.
My power went out. So
Oh, did it
I'm on a
really?
hotspot. Yeah, it literally is out right now.
I was gonna say that is a quick return after a power outage. Heck yeah, look at
I
you.
I'm on battery power on my laptop, and we've got the hotspot going. So we're here. Luckily, we're already just in Q&A. The
Cool.
things that I was going to say that there's been speculation about testing. It was actually could be very controversial. Is
Mhm.
page titles and meta descriptions is one of the really
Okay.
interesting things. So there is some speculation that maybe having longer page titles could potentially give Google more to work with,
Mhm.
because a lot of times we see that they rewrite page titles and meta descriptions anyway, right? We get this
Mhm.
question sometimes. People see that even if they've set their meta description, that little blurb that kind of describes your page, right? And then
Yep.
it often appears in the search results. Sometimes Google's just going to do what Google's going to do. They rewrite
Mhm.
this stuff anyway. And so I'm hearing some people suggest potentially testing, rather than the standard recommendation of like 60 to 70 characters in a page title, maybe doing super long page titles to kind of give
Mhm.
Google more options to work with for what they're going to rewrite
Yep.
anyway. And then with meta description, some people are guessing, since Google seems to just want to change it all the time anyway, like, is it even worth doing them? So we haven't
Yep.
actually started recommending people do that yet, because we want to be able to test some of that. But if any of our members want to have things to test and see if
Mhm.
that might help them, those are options. Just proceed with caution and know that you are testing things.
Yeah, yeah, and that's an important one, right? Because in the document, like you said, it didn't explicitly say, "Hey, do this thing." It's just inferences from the data. But one of the things I want everyone to understand and recognize is Google has gotten so darn good at understanding the intent of a page. And when Mallory mentions that, or when a member sees that what they have in their title tag, that page description or the description is different than what Google is displaying, it may mean that Google actually thinks your page is a little bit different. The topic or the intent is a little bit different than what you put on there. And in reality, either Google is saying, "Hey, this is what your page is actually about, not what you said," or it's saying, "Hey, these are maybe some better words that kind of describe it." And either way, I would look at those and ask the question, why is Google putting this and not this? And if you feel that what Google is writing on there actually is a accurate description of what you're doing, then ask the question, well, is there other content on here I should update to reinforce that kind of a thing? I love that. That's a good one. Anything else pop to mind for you that are things we're recommending people do differently since the
To me, it's
leak?
not a lot of like do this differently, because like I was saying, a lot of the things that I'm seeing being interpreted are really just create a good user experience, right?
Yeah.
Which is what Google has been broadly saying
Mhm.
for a number of years. They've had a number of different helpful content updates with many of
Yeah.
their big algorithm changes. Um, and so that's it. It's just, if you're trying to game the system right now, stop.
Mhm.
Focus on your actual human beings that you're trying to work with, and
Yeah.
focus on them offline as well as on your website.
Yeah, and I'll double down on what Mallory said. Yeah, as I'm going through the different parts of SEO, there's a strong text stack and page structure. There's the content on the page. There's the the off site or the off page elements, which are the links and things like that. Not do differently, but do more of. We had already mentioned them. Do more offline marketing or things that reinforce getting people to your site. That's not different than what we've taught. It just reinforces, hey, yeah, guys, go do more of this stuff, because it actually seems to be an indicator. One thing I do want people to think about, though, it goes to the backlink side of things. So this isn't new. It's not new because the Google leak at all, but our industry isn't unique to other industries. But I think one thing that is common in this industry is a lot of people put probably too much weight on backlink or backlink volume and not enough weight on high quality user experience and searchability on the website. And this is something we've been talking about since 2016. So this is not a new topic here. But one of the challenges that does come in is oftentimes people want a shortcut. And sometimes when people are joining Carrot, they're either gonna do all the work and dive in and do it the right way, right? I'm gonna research, I'm gonna use the Carrot tools to make it easier. I'm gonna get unique content on there. I'm gonna do some things to build credibility and do all the right things. But then there's the customers who maybe, or the members who maybe don't want to, or they don't have the time to invest into, so they want the easy button. And there really isn't an easy button, I think, that lasts for the long term. Whether it's using AI for content, I think you can use AI for content to help aid in the creation of content, but we're already seeing some customers who have used AI at massive scale across 1,000+ blog posts that were pretty much 100% written by AI, even really, really high quality prompting, that now those websites, after massive traffic increase, they're seeing massive traffic drops. So I think at the end of the day, like Mallory said, is you do need to put in the work, add real value on the website, build that brand, and be consistent. And I think you'll be rewarded over time. But yeah, no real changes in what we're educating people to do that I can think of. Any other questions pop up?
Yeah, it's about building relationships.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Was that the one?
We've got one more question.
One more?
Tony.
Cool.
And he asked if there are any special considerations if his brand name is different than his URL.
I got it. Cool. So next question. Are there any special considerations if the brand name is different than the URL itself? So I'll toss this one over to you, Mallory. What are your thoughts on that? Brand name different than the actual URL?
I think we touched kind of on this earlier, right? It's not necessarily something that's answered with this leak documentation. It's more of a broader question. I think there are instances where people have really strong brand names and they're not able to get that URL, and they have to settle for like a slightly different, URL that's not exactly their brand name. And you can still work around that. I think it's always going to be ideal if your brand name matches your URL. But if you've done everything else right, that URL in and of itself, like what it actually says, does not really have the weight that it would have 20 years ago, right? Like, I think it's just like building that awareness, building that traffic, building the backlinks, the relevant backlinks and citations to that URL, making sure that you've set up everything so that people and search engines can find that URL.
Yep. Yeah, there's a good example. I was talking with one of our members, Jordan, today. He's a massive agent in Portland. He might be the biggest by volume in Portland, Oregon. He's a Carrot member as well on the house buy side of things. And his primary URL is a very, very amazing generic URL. I think it's literally portlandrealestate.com, I'm pretty sure. He bought that one 3, 4, 5 years ago. Now, his company and brand name on the retail side is his name. It's Jordan Mayton, right? And so I think that's a really common one, especially with a real estate agent where their company might be their name, but many of them have a different URL. And I think that's fine, right? Because it depends on, like you said, it depends on how they're using the URL. Because it might be easier to remember portlandrealestate.com than Jordan Mayton, and they might not know how to spell it.
Yeah, I think the spelling thing is a big one. That's what I was going to say. If you are building kind of a personal brand as an agent or something like that, right? And you have a name that often trips people up with the spelling or pronunciation, and you want to be doing like that offline marketing on TV ads or mailers, and you're directing people to your website, in that case, it might make sense to have a URL that is easier for them to type in versus accidentally misspelling your name.
Heck yeah. So yeah, don't agonize on it over too much, Tony. But just make sure it's intentional. I think that's the biggest thing. Is like Mallory said a lot of times on this. Think about the URL as a holistic part of your marketing, not just to try to game a Google My Business listing or to game Google. Think about it from the whole perspective. If I'm using this for direct mail or TV later, or I'm networking, or I'm talking with a client, what is the URL that's going to best help the overall overall picture of my marketing, drive the person to the web, and build trust. So that right there, like if I were to sum up everything, Mallory, it's exactly what you mentioned, is think about marketing holistically and where does this website fit into. That's huge advice you gave.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say too, kind of a sidebar, but if you were doing that offline marketing and say you already had your established domain name that was maybe a little hard to spell based on your name or something, but you wanted to do that offline marketing, you could also set up a second URL that was a little simpler for people to type in and have that just direct to your main URL, right? There's plenty of ways that you can do that. That's a little bit more in the weeds and complicated, but there's plenty of ways to work around that kind of stuff.
I love it. Brayden, any more questions?
That's all we had
We're
in
good.
today's live section.
Cool. That's perfect. So I want to be able to save your battery for you. That's who, Mallory. Hopefully you get that power back soon. But y'all, thank you guys for tuning in. Keep the questions coming. Keep showing up at 11 o'clock. We're going to be here, and we want you guys to leverage the Facebook group as an amazing resource. Leverage the help center as an amazing resource. Leverage all the content that we've already created, whether it's on YouTube, as those resources for you guys to really drive towards grow the leads, grow the business, and build the business you want. So thank you, Mallory, for, as always, for amazing guidance and knowledge here. And we're going to sign off for today. Appreciate y'all. Have an amazing rest of the week. We'll see you next week.